Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's members event, a conversation and studio visit with artist Joan Snyder. Before we begin, I want to thank Joan Snyder and her studio assistant, Carrie Emirata, who have really been instrumental in helping us put this program together today. I also want to thank Whitney Prendergast and Janine D'Auguste at the Zimmerli, who have also worked really hard to make this program happen. The event is being recorded and it will be available on our Zimmerli at Home site and also on our Zimmerli YouTube channel. Janine will be fielding questions for Joan, so please submit any questions that you have through the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. And we'll get to as many of them as we can, and we'll do questions at the end of the presentation. So thanks again for being here today. So Joan Snyder, as many of you know, is a graduate of Douglas College, and she also has an MFA from Rutgers. She's also the founder of the Mary H. Dana Women's Artist Series, which was formerly known as the Women's Artist Series, and that began in 1971 and is still ongoing. She is a world-renowned painter and printmaker whose work has been collected by private collections and museums throughout America and Europe. She's also a MacArthur Fellow. And we're really delighted to have her with us today. I also want to remind everyone that in 2011, Marilyn Sims, who was our curator of prints and the director of the Morse Research Center for years at the Zimmerli, and a wonderful print scholar, put together a beautiful print retrospective of Joan's work, which was called Dancing with the Dark, Joan Snyder Prints, 1963 to 2010. And I'm sure many of you saw that show at the Zimmerli. We own 14 prints by the artist, but today's event is inspired by our recent acquisition of a painting called Still from 2011 by Joan Snyder. Acquiring a painting by Joan Snyder has been a priority at the museum since that exhibition that Marilyn did in 2011. So we are so grateful to Thea Samet and Sharon Siegel for making the acquisition of this stellar work possible. And I think we can see an image of that work to start us off. So today's event will really be a presentation mostly by Joan. She's put together a fantastic group of images, and she's going to talk us through them. We'll have some, I have some questions, so we'll have a little bit of a conversation, but I really want to put the spotlight mostly on Joan. But I wanted to start off by saying just a few words about this painting, which we are so happy to have, and will be hanging in the American galleries when we reopen to the public, which we plan for the fall of 2021 when the university reopens to the public. So Joan, I love this painting's mood and the complexity. It feels to me like an iconic work. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about this painting, how it came to be, why you titled it Still. Why is the word so important? I think it appears 6 times in the composition.
Wow. Well, looking at it now, I see that there's actually a figure in the middle. Mm-hmm. Which, I don't always remember or think about, but it really is like a kind of a large white dress. And in the middle of that dress is one of these things that I do, which is that I open it up and then a little area up and then stuff it with something, or I can't really see this one close up, but I have a feeling it probably does have something inside there, right in the middle. Mm-hmm. Every once in a while I decide to do kind of very white painting where I use a lot of white and a lot of rose colors and a lot of pinks, and I suppose it's kind of a feminist moment, where that's what I want to do. And the word still for me in this painting had 2 different meanings. It's to be still, in other words, to be quiet and to meditate. But it also means still, like it's still going on, or it's still happening, or, you know. So it's really, when you think about it, it's two very different connotations in the same painting. And that's, you know, that's what I was doing. And then I was repeating the word over and over.
Yeah, it is. Oh, go ahead.
No, go.
I was going to say it is hard to see on a digital screen, but it is very three-dimensional, and there is, as you say, the cutout, and it's sort of filled in with crumpled fabric and beads and other things too. So yeah, it's very three-dimensional. That doesn't come across as well as it should in a slide.
None of the work really does. I mean, but you have to imagine that it's, you know, it's quite thick, the paint, and there are all kinds of things on it that have thickness to it. I chose the next painting, unless are you finished with this?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. I chose the next painting kind of thinking about Thea Samet and Sharon Siegel, who gifted Still to the museum, because when they gifted it, they said these very simple words. I mean, they said that they were gifting it in support of women. And I mean, I think that's so simple, but so powerful. And so I decided to show, late last night, I changed the lecture around, probably driving my assistant crazy, but I did take things out and put things in. And I decided to put Women of Liberia in. That's what this painting is called. I'm doing a little bit of a 10-year thing. So this is still 2010. I made this painting after I saw a movie called Pray the Devil Back to Hell. And it's a terrific movie about Liberia and the civil war that was going on there. And I don't, you know, you can look it up, but it really was about a group of women who, in that town in Liberia, got together and all dressed in white and went to the town square every day. And we're talking about thousands and thousands of women, grandmothers, mothers, teenagers. And they wanted this bloody civil war to stop, and nobody knew how to stop this war in Liberia. I think they stopped cooking. I think they stopped cleaning. I think they were on strike. They stopped everything with the men and went to the town square every day. And finally, believe it or not, they stopped the civil war. And these were Christian and Muslim women. So I made this painting because that whole story is so moving to me. So check out the movie. It's called Pray the Devil Back to Hell. Okay, then next. This is a large painting that I did in the summer of 2010. I think I worked on it all summer. It's called Summer Fugue. And I don't know, it's like an altar. It's a 3-part painting. It has a pond on the left side. It has what I thought about as kind of dark, a very dark area on the right side. Even though it doesn't look that dark to me, that was what was in my mind. But the phenomenal thing that happened while I was making this painting, honestly, was that our book group in Woodstock, we had a small book group, was reading Swan's Way. And I was pretty much 3/4 of the way finished or more with this painting. There's a passage in Swan's Way that exactly describes this painting. I mean, it was shocking to me. So, I mean, if I was giving a longer lecture, I would go to that passage and read it, but I can't do it now. Let's look at the detail of. Yeah, we just wanted to show you a detail of the pond on the left. So you get a better idea of what it looks like. Next. This is called Brooklyn 2010, and I remember that I did this painting. It followed Summer Fugue, and it was after, I moved from Woodstock back to Brooklyn for the winter, and that's when I did Brooklyn 2010. I don't know. I mean, it just, honestly, I remember it just kind of coming out of nowhere, but it's a very powerful painting with burlap and silk, and it has some writing on it. It has a lot of material, you know, like probably rose hips and twigs and paint, acrylic and oil. Anyway, that's Brooklyn 2010.
Can I ask you to talk a little bit about the materials that you embed in the painting to create all these textures and
Well, I've been using material in my painting from the very beginning. Really in the early 60s, I was using flocking and glitter and lentil seeds and cheesecloth. I stopped doing that in the early 70s when I was doing the stroke paintings. And I don't even think I thought about why am I stopping doing that, but the stroke paintings were much more pure to me. They didn't require me to use a lot of materials. In the mid-70s, I started, when all the feminist dialogue was going on, is there a female sensibility, you know? Somehow I abandoned the stroke paintings with a long waiting list of people who wanted them, but I actually got a little bit bored with them after doing them for 4 or 5 years. They happened very quickly. I would think about them for days on end, and then maybe 2 days, it would take me 2 days to make one of these big stroke paintings. So I wanted to make paintings that were taking me longer to make, and also that addressed this whole female sensibility idea, not to mention what was going on in my own life personally at the time. And it all kind of came together for me to start using a lot of materials again. I mean, you know, there's a painting called Vanishing Theater that has chicken wire and cheesecloth and fur and fake fur and things like that. Anyway, next. This is called Spring Eternal, and it was painted in 2012. And, you know, every one of my paintings probably has a personal story to it. And I think the personal story to this one is that my daughter was pregnant, and I think we were all, you know, excited and waiting. And this is sort of a very light colored, beautiful spring-like painting with this shape in the middle, like a womb. And then this was done in Woodstock. It's a large painting, 2013, called Meditation on a Dark Field. And here I was in the middle of summer making this painting. So go and figure that one out. But I think it's like 5.5 by 12 feet or thereabouts. And it really was for me like a meditation on a dark field. And that's what I called it. They all have lots of material in them. They all have paper mache and burlap, and some have rosebuds and rose hips. Next. This one is called Symphony Seven, and obviously it's a seventh symphony that I made. You're not seeing the other 6. But this was done in 2014, and it's another very large painting. Kind kind of formal. You know, it's got these 4 squares with four different versions or varieties of rose painted on them. And the 5th square on the bottom right that's a piece of silk, actually white silk. And it's the rose is drawn onto that silk, I think, I don't think it's paint. I think it's probably some kind of crayon. So this is Symphony 7. And they're on, you see the brown, it's on unprimed. Well, it is primed, but it's brown linen. And then I prime it clear so that you can see the linen. This is Heart of the Fugue. And I don't know, I put this is one that I edited at the last minute just because it's sort of light and fun, and it does have that whole music thing in it. You know, the colored marks are, to me, they're like sound that's going through the painting, moving along the painting. And of course, the word fugue is in the title, and there's a heart in the middle. So I ended up calling Heart of the Fugue instead of Art of the Fugue by Bach.
So can I interject a question about music appears often in your work as references or titles? And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how music informs your process or your way of thinking about painting.
Well, I've learned I learn. Not only do I learn by listening to music and the structure of music and the sound and the beauty and how complicated and complex it is, but music also puts me into a very meditative, deep state, and there I access painting ideas. And I knew you were going to ask me this question, Donna, so I actually came up with, I don't know if you can see them, but I came up with some little sketches just to give you an idea of that's me sitting at a Pina Bausch concert at BAM coming up with a painting idea. And they're usually sketches and I write words. Here's one at Maverick. This is at a concert hall right in Woodstock. You can't really see that one very well, but I just wanted you to get an idea. So I go to a lot of concerts, and I haven't lately. So that's kind of problematic because that's really where I get my painting ideas. Here's another one from BAM when I was went to hear De Rosenkavalier. So this is, you know, I sit there and somehow these ideas just come to me, painting ideas, and it always follows whatever I was doing before. And when I paint, I listen to music all the time. I mean, I have an old CD player, very old, and I put 5 CDs in there and often listen to them over and over and over again. When I'm making a particular painting, I pick a playlist and I just listen to the same music over and over again. And it really does inspire me. And I don't know. I mean, do I get inspired when I go to museums and look at paintings? Probably not. I mean, it's not like I'm not inspired by other art, but you know, listening to music is really for me the way it happens. So.
Thank you, Joan. That was a very good answer.
I hope it wasn't too long.
I loved seeing those sketches. Thank you.
Yeah. This one is called Song Cycle 6 for Molly, and Molly's my daughter. Obviously, there are 5 song cycles before this one, but I decided to show this one because it kind of fits in with this decade of work. It's almost a figure in the middle with lots of breasts and anthropomorphic shapes. And I also did this, that's the summer of 2016 in Woodstock. And the other thing that appears in a lot of my paintings are kind of totem-like figures. So to me, that's sort of a totem in the middle. It's totemic, with lots of red strokes and some writing around the sides. This one is called Love Mom, and it was done in 2017. It's kind of a serene, poetic, quiet painting that has some words written in it. And believe it or not, it was done during a time of some really difficult stuff that was going on in our family. And I realized that, you know, I always thought, well, how could you be making these gorgeous, serene paintings with everything that was going on? And then I realized that they're really kind of quiet and they might be serene, but they're also different than the ones where I pile on material. It's almost like a whisper for me. That middle red stroke towards the right has full of glitter, so it's just this beautiful glittered stroke. Anyway, so this is Love Mom, and then it's followed by a painting called She, which is just a very large female figure done during the same time, kind of a powerful, also kind of totemic woman with lots of writing in it. The writing is not necessarily for you to read, and sometimes I can't even read it, you know, a few years later. I can read some of it. This is a detail, just so you can see, like right in the middle there, it's a piece of part of an etching that I pasted on, and a black and white etching piece collaged on. But that's just so you can see the detail. This one is called Lipstick, which is a pretty funny title, done during a not so funny period of time. But it's also a painting that to me has a great sense of humor, in spite of everything at the time. And, you know, it's lips and hearts and grapes and totems, and it's me once again putting in a grid and just wanting to speak my language within that grid. And that's really what it is. It's my language. So that's Lipstick. This is called Nature Remains. And I guess it's, you know, really referencing the environment and very landscape-like to me, with a pond in that blue pond with kind of a figure coming out of the middle of it, with little arms going up. So that's Nature Remains. This is a really large painting called Fragments of a Soul. And I don't know, I mean, to me, it kind of encompassed everything. I can't really, it's got, on the whole bottom of it is very much like Nature Remains. I mean, it's got, one of the things I didn't mention are the Chinese herbs. I mean, many years ago in Brooklyn, I shared a space with an acupuncturist, and she gave her patients or her clients Chinese herbs, and they were loose herbs in jars, which they would take home and cook. I don't know if any of you have ever done that, but they smell horrible and they're awful, but you drink them. Anyway, at one point, Rachel decided to give her clients, pills instead of the herbs. She gave me all of her Chinese herbs. I mean, I have bottles of them. I still have them in Brooklyn, some of them. And for a few years, I was making healing paintings with the Chinese herbs. And then I just started using them all the time. And I think the bottom, if you show the detail, Carrie, the bottom of the painting, not the one before, the bottom of the painting, this one is full of those Chinese herbs. And you can see there's a figure sort of coming from that Love Mom series onto this painting on the right. And this was just to give you an idea of it, show you some details of the painting. Go back to the one before. Yeah. There's a figure there. There's another sort of totemic figure in the middle on the top. Yeah, there it is. It's the whole thing.
Can I ask you a question about the idea of using a double canvas and working off that center line and mirroring imagery, which occurs a lot in your work?
You can ask. I think, honestly, I think part of it is that there's no way I could make a painting that big if it was in one piece. Part of it is that I did begin making triptychs and diptychs years ago, and they really were triptychs and diptychs. Mm-hmm. The newer ones that I'm going to show you in a few minutes really are two-part paintings. Yeah, this is a two-part painting where it's mirroring each other, but would I have made it on one panel if I wanted to paint that big? One of the things I have to do when I paint is I have to take them off the wall and put them on the floor, because sometimes there's stuff that has to dry lying down. Mm-hmm. It can't dry standing up, especially the ponds that I make. I mean, those are thick and they have to be poured lying down. So then I have to lie them down and then pick them up again. And there's no way that I can do that. There would be no way to move a 12-foot, 4.5 by 12-foot thing myself, unless I had an assistant sitting by my side the whole time, which I know a lot of male artists have that, but I don't have that. Just kidding. So I don't know, I think that since I'm putting two parts together, it really is a mirroring. I mean, it really does begin to speak to me. So that happens. I mean, but I think part of it is practical as well as, everything else.
It works, it adds a layer of complexity, and I don't know, it's a beautiful thing, and it appears over and over again. I wanted to sort of see if there was something to it. So
yeah, well, there's a lot to it. I mean, like, here's another one, and this is not a big painting. It's not small, but it's medium size, called Celadon and Silk. And, it's probably that I had those two panels and I wanted to make a bigger painting, so I put them together. But I don't really know anymore. I mean, I probably don't think about it that much. It just happens instinctively. Let me put those two pieces together, and, that's what I want to do. I stuck this one in at the last minute too, because I love this little painting, and it's as much to amuse myself as to amuse the audience, but it's really a different palette. I mean, it's all these kind of pink, these kind of turquoise and blue and celadon green, and then it's got little family there. It's got a large figure that looks like a man, but it has breasts, and then it's got a child and two other figures, and there's another child on top. On the right, there's sort of a little rabbit hopping around with ponds. And anyway, I really like this painting, which is why I put it up. This is called The Summer Becomes a Room. And I think I kind of stole that title a little bit from Rilke. His wasn't The Summer Becomes a Room, it was Something Else Becomes a Room. But anyway, I remember getting back to Brooklyn in September probably, and making this painting. And it's not a large painting. It happened relatively quickly, but I was sort of putting everything into one painting, you know, all the pieces, all the parts. There's even part of a African sculpture that I have right over here, actually, that I'll show you, that I've been working with forever. Can you see it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I started using this years ago and made a lot of drawings with this figure. And anyway, so on the upper left-hand corner is the figure sort of mirroring each other, and then there's another piece of it down in the middle. Anyway, it's just a painting that's full of a lot of imagery but also a lot of light, with handprints. And this is called Black Lake, and it is purposely a two-part painting. Really, I think what was thinking about, or have been thinking about, is the idea of kind of revisiting the strokes and kind of taking apart the strokes and the anatomy of a stroke and what all that means, and then the idea of deconstructing the pond into this abstract painting on the right, or the lake. I mean, I call it a pond, but then I called it a lake for the title. So it's so hard to see this. There's, you know, the lake on the left side, there's so many beautiful parts to it, but you can't, it's hard to see on the screen. But anyway, that's what this painting is about, and that's what the next painting is about as well, called Field Marks, where I've made a lot of pumpkin field paintings over the years. I just love pumpkin fields. So I decided to make a painting that had two parts to it, and that did the same thing, that sort of used a lot of my imagery and thought about taking apart the pumpkin field, or you know, just making another field, really, is what it looks like to me, but resonating with the pumpkin field on the left. I do think of myself as a landscape painter. You know, so many of the paintings are, it's unusual to have a vertical painting for me. They're mostly horizontal. And, you know, that's the other thing that moves and inspires me all the time, is a landscape, flowers and fields. And I started making the bean fields when Molly and I moved out to Eastport, New York, and our house was surrounded by bean fields. And that's when I started making, I had been making very heavy paintings after the stroke paintings. And then I wanted to get back to the feeling of the stroke paintings without making stroke paintings. So I looked at these bean fields and I said, my God, I could make bean fields. And then the farmer who was harvesting or making the bean fields had a stroke, and they turned into weed fields. They turned into the most gorgeous flower fields and weed fields. And so then I started making weed fields. And anyway, so this is a pumpkin field with another type of field of marks on the right. I made this about 1 year ago now, or a little bit later than now, up here in Woodstock. And it's called Weeping Cherry Tree and Thee. And I was saying to Carrie the other day when I was looking at it, I thought this was just a beautiful blossoming weeping cherry tree. I'd forgotten that it became such a complicated other painting. There's a hand in there that's sculptural. There's a figure on the right, which is what the thee is referring to. It's like a large female figure with grapes on the face. But anyway, it was me watching our weeping cherry tree, which is right out front, blossom and bloom and come into being for the spring. So that's what and this is a 3-part painting that, I just had to, I don't know how that happened. I mean, I just added that top part and that became the top part of the tree. This is the last painting of this series. This is called Perhaps the Roses, and it's the same type of idea with a rose field on the left, and it has rose stems and paper mache flowers, and then on the right is actually a very packed field with strokes and there's a lot of things going on the right side. It's on unprimed linen, or primed linen, sorry, but you can see the linen really well. So that's the end of the slide presentation. And then the next thing we were going to do is to walk around the studio. Is that right?
Yes.
So I was going to show the audience some new work, my studio and some new work. It's not the best way to do it because I'm holding my computer in my hand and pointing it at the paintings, but you'll get an idea. And the other thing I'm going to show you, because I did this with the Tate Modern the other day and everyone was very excited about it, which is that my grandson has a tortoise and it happened to have been left here for the pandemic. So I have to show you my tortoise that I'm taking care of this whole pandemic. This is a new one. Tell me if you can see it okay.
Yeah, we can see it. That's good, Joan. It's good. It helps us get the scale of the paintings too.
Yeah. And I can go up closer to give you detail, which is kind of nice because you can't get those in the slides.
So do you generally title your works after you finish them? Do you think about them for a while?
Both. This is a lot of scraps and things that I use in the paintings, and I sort of print off of some of the marks in the paintings and then save those scraps. So this is a big painting that I'm not going to start moving my chairs, but you'll get the idea. It's brand new.
Beautiful. It's nice to see it next to all your little sketches. You get a real sense of your process and you're thinking through things. So.
And this is another new one that I really love. one of my favorites because it's so kind of clear and clean.
Yeah. Huh.
And I have a funny title for this, but it's really true. The title for this painting is I Kept Looking at Monet.
Huh.
Because I have this big Monet book, and the whole time I was making this painting, he was really helping me.
One of my questions I was going to ask you is if there were any landscape painters that you particularly like to look at. So,
well, you know, I love Kiefer, and in fact, I have all this straw here, but that's for Torty. So I'm not making a Kiefer, but I love Kiefer. I love Monet. I love Van Gogh. I mean, who could not love to look at Van Gogh landscapes? I'm going to show you the turtle. Pride view. Hey, Torty, take your. Where's your
there he
head?
is.
Can you see her?
Yes. Yeah, we can.
She's taking her head out of her thing.
Yeah, I see her. Huh. She looks
Anyway.
happy.
So that's my studio tour.
Well, that was great. Thank you so much, Joan. And we're right on time, so we've left 15 minutes for questions. That was really terrific. It was so nice to see so much beautiful work. It's a really nice selection of images, wide ranging. Enjoyed it.
Hard for me to narrow it down. You know, that's why I kept changing things because I left this out. I left this out. Oh my God, I want to put this. You know, and to come down. I think I have over 2,000 paintings. To come down to 24 paintings. But I'm glad you liked it.
No, and it's nice to see new work, and so that was wonderful. So I think I can turn it over to Janine. Do you want to start letting people ask questions through you?
Yes, and thank you again, Joan. That was fantastic, and we appreciate getting to see the studio and the tortoise as well. So we actually had two similar questions, one from Liz and one from Bill about the drip painting, the drip technique in your work. Would you like to speak a little bit about that?
The drip technique. Oh my God. Well, you know, when you have a brush full of paint and you go like this, it drips. And I like the way it looks, and I pretty much am in control of almost every drip. I mean, I don't let every drip stay, and I wipe them. I wipe part of them. So it's really just part of the painting process. It's not, there's a lot of drips. And sometimes I'm flinging paint, you know, I'm not just dripping it. I have a brush full of paint, I fling it. So there's lots going on. On the other hand, as expressionistic as it looks, I'm fairly well in control of every mark and every moment. So
Wonderful.
It's a combination of things.
Excellent. Oh, so we, let's see, there's so many questions coming in, which is exciting. Oh, we had a question specifically about Summer Fugue and the passage in Swan's Way that coincided with the painting.
What's the question?
Oh, what is the passage in Swan's Way that coincided with the painting?
I'd have to go to my other computer and pull it up.
Okay.
I mean, it's a long passage. I mean, it describes the painting. What can I say? I can send it to you, Janine, and then you can.
Sure.
You can give it. I mean, you can post it if you want, actually, or whatever. But I do have the whole passage.
Wonderful. Okay, so we'll look.
It's absolutely gorgeous, and it really describes that painting.
Excellent. Well, we'll look forward to that for sure.
Including, by the way, he talks about hell. The end of his passage ends in hell, and that's what my painting ended in. So it all was pretty astonishing.
Wonderful.
And if you think you can't read Proust, try it. It's actually not as hard as you think it might be.
Got it. So let's see. Oh, someone would like to know about the role of printmaking in your larger practice, which I would like to know about as well.
Well, unfortunately, the last little Zooming thing I did, I was working on a print. I'm working on a print remotely with this Bob Townsend, who's a master printer, but we're sending things back and forth through the mail. And at the moment, he happens to have all the proof, so I can't show you. But what I can say is that I absolutely love printmaking. I mean, I really love making prints. And for years, I was doing them on my own, and then I had my own press. But then I started going to different print shops and working with printers. When I'm printing, I'm not painting. I mean, I'm really very focused, and it usually lasts maybe a week or 2 or 3 in a print shop. But it totally feeds my painting all the time. I mean, I'm constantly, like I'll make something on the thing, and I'll put a piece of towel on it, and then I'll reprint it here, reprint it there. I'm constantly printing while I'm painting as well. I mean, and that's what that whole wall of images is. So the answer is that, and the other thing about my prints is that they are as complicated as my paintings. And I have a tendency to drive the printmakers kind of crazy, because often it'll be lithography, etching, and then woodblock on top of all of that. And it's really becomes complicated and hard to pull off. But I love the combination of textures, which is very similar to what happens in my paintings, as I have that combination of textures in printmaking. So yeah, printmaking is really important to me.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Janet. Joan, can you speak about how your experience at Douglas helped shape you as an artist or influenced your practice? Speak a little bit about your time from one fellow Rutgers alum to another.
Well, at Douglas, I was a sociology major. So what happened was that when I was going into my senior year, for some reason, I decided I wanted to paint. I have no idea. I mean, I did paint as a young person, but I decided I wanted to paint. And I actually talked myself into a 101 painting course, as opposed to taking all the other things you're supposed to take before you take a painting course. So I got into this painting course, and it was on the Rutgers campus. It was not on the Douglas campus, with a teacher named Robert Reed. And I painted maybe 6 months, and at one point he said to me, "How do you like Yablonsky?" And I didn't know who Yablonsky was. I didn't know who anybody was. He dragged me up to the slide room and showed me Russian Expressionism and German Expressionism. And he showed me a painting that had almost the same colors and marks and expression. I had been making a painting of my brother and sister-in-law. And it was just like this Yablonsky painting. Anyway, from that moment on, I started taking it really seriously. And then I painted on my own for like a year or 2. I actually rented a studio on the Raritan River at a dock and painted there. One day, this is true, filled my car up with paintings, like 10 paintings, drove up to the Rutgers MFA program, which was then on the Douglas campus, in the building where the old library was. Literally knocked on the door and said, "I want to get into this program. Can I show you some paintings?" And they said yes. I carried my paintings in, showed them to these guys, because there were no women in teaching art, ever then. And they actually accepted me as a non-matriculated student for a year to prove myself, because they liked them enough to think that, well, you know, because I had no experience, but my, you know, just that one course and my own painting. So that's how I got into the MFA program. I did 1 year non-matriculated, did 2 more years and got an MFA.
It's so interesting, Joan. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Elena would like to know if you paint every day. Is your work a part of your, you know, every day?
I paint every day. There's, with me, there's, if I'm working on a painting, there's, it's not like there's a weekend. Yeah, every day from about 8 or, I wake up very early, but I don't get into the studio till maybe 7 or maybe 8 o'clock in the morning, or, and then I work till 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and that's it. And maybe with a break for lunch, and I'll go back in to look at what's going on. But I do paint every day and very consistently. When I'm having a show, that's, you know, that with every artist, that's what interrupts you. That's what sort of throws a stick in your bicycle wheel. You know, then you have to start dealing with business and galleries and the show and moving work and hanging, you know, it's a whole other, you know, world. And then you're not painting. I mean, I don't know anybody that really paints when they're in the process of doing a show. So that's the answer.
Let's see. Oh, someone would like to know if the pandemic has influenced your work at all.
Well, honestly, I don't think I'm here making pandemic paintings. I'm a hermit anyway, you know, so as I said, I paint every day and I'm home. You know, I like to stay home. I mean, the happiest thing in my life is when there's nothing on my calendar. The happiest thing in Maggie's life is when she has her calendar full. So we're very different that way. The pandemic has been very anxiety provoking and difficult and scary. And on the other hand, you know, it's given me this kind of quiet time in the studio that is, it's been a great distraction, really. For, you know, I come in here, I put my music on, I work, and I don't worry as much when I'm in here because I'm really thinking about the work and the paintings, and I've, you know, set up ways to distract myself, you know, completely. So, yeah, I mean, I think the pandemic has probably affected me just the way it's affected almost everyone. It's, and we're very lucky to be here and be well. And, you know, my daughter's well, my grandson's well. And that's really what I care about, you know, in the short, just a small picture. But yeah, it's been hard, but I've been lucky because I've been able to work. I mean, and a lot of people have not been able to work the same way. I mean, I can come into my workplace and do my work. Yeah. So it's been great. And I had a show, you know, my show at Canada happened during the pandemic, but people did come to see it. And we drove down and saw it, which was great. So, you know, I consider myself very lucky.
I understand. Yeah. For sure. I feel the same way. Very happy to be able to work during all of this.
Yeah.
For sure. Let's see. Oh, you know what, Joan, can you talk about how you start a painting? Donna, you know, noticed the, Donna Bloomfield noticed the smaller pieces of paper next to some of your larger paintings. Do you start with smaller sketches? I know you had mentioned how music influences you and you sketch during concerts. Is that, do you usually start a larger work with some smaller sketches? This is spoken as someone who has no artistic ability, as you can tell.
I often start a larger work by looking at the sketches and seeing where I was. I mean, I'm often like 2 years behind. Like my sketches are ahead of me. So like now I'll be looking at sketches that I did maybe 2-3 years ago. And get ideas for new paintings. But, you know, often one thing leads to another. And I don't start with a lot of drawing and sketching, because for me, I feel like that would blow it. You know, I mean, I would use all the energy and all the thought and all the, you know, whatever on a drawing, and then the painting I might be sucking that kind of energy out of being able to take that stuff and use it in the painting. So I have a lot of work on paper, but it's really not, they're really usually not ideas for, the ideas for paintings are all in these tiny sketchbooks. And then I just look at a blank canvas and I start from there. I mean, you know, I usually prime it with something. I start drawing on it with chalk or whatever, or making marks or measuring things if I want to grid. Having an idea of the palette, having an idea of the material I want to put in it. Do I want to put flowers in it? Then I'm soaking them in mediums, and I don't know. It's just magic, you know.
It's wonderful. Let's see, we have another question. Mark Roderick, one of our board members, would like to know if you use plywood or any other large materials instead of canvas in any of your paintings.
No, I don't use, no, I don't. Occasionally I'll have a small wooden panel that's just been lying around, and I can paint on small pieces of wood and pieces of plywood. You know, like scraps sometimes that I get from the lumber yard are kind of fun to paint on, but I've never painted on a large piece of plywood. No, I think that would be hard to do, because first of all, they're not, you know, I mean, they're made out of all kinds of chemicals and layers, and they're heavy, and there's no way to hang it up, you know. So I've always just painted on stretched canvas myself when it's large.
And then we have another question that kind of coincides with something I'd like to know, is your use of found objects in your art, in your work.
Like?
Well, you know, materials from nature. You said you go to lumber yards and pick things up. Is that part of the idea process for a work, or I know you work with natural materials a lot.
Yeah, you know, there's all kinds of stuff all over the studio. Like, you know, like I have a little basket of, you know, from dried roses, you know, that I have poppy pods. I have all kinds of bags of silk and burlap. You know, it just collects over the years, I think. I don't think that well, if I want to make a lot of tiny paintings, I might go to the lumber yard and, you know, look at their scraps. But I sometimes do that for you know, like there's a gallery up here, Elena Zhang Gallery, where I've done a lot of shows with little paintings so we could sell them to people for very little money, and, you know, like $1,000 each or something, or $500 each. So people could afford tiny paintings. But generally speaking, no, I don't go and look around the lumber yards. Or I think it's really natural, a lot of natural stuff, plus glitter. I mean, I have a big collection of glitters from Garrett Paints. I mean, I do have a lot of glitter.
Who doesn't love glitter, right, Joan?
Huh?
Who doesn't love glitter?
Who doesn't love glitter? But I actually haven't used it in a while. I don't know why. It's just not my glitter time, I guess.
Probably the pandemic.
The pandemic just doesn't inspire glitter. It's just not a glittery. Yeah. I don't know about found objects. I mean, the one thing that I put in, well, like right here, for example, this is a hoop that I got at the local, you know, it's a wooden hoop, and there's an oval hoop in the Monet painting that I got at the local fabric store. That kind of thing I get attracted to. You know, I go into those kind of stores and buy things. Straw, a lot of straw, hay, you know, just, I don't know, whatever I can get my hands on that I might want to put in a painting. The rose hips, rosebuds, plastic grapes. I did that a lot for quite a while, which is sort of funny, to put plastic grapes in paintings. But I like that.
Excellent.
Can I interject a quick question? Because, I thought that Brooklyn painting was called Brooklyn and the date was 2010. So I was very surprised the other day when you told me the title was Brooklyn 2010. And I wondered, does that title mean something?
No, I mean, don't ask where the titles come from. Sometimes it's pretty clear and obvious, but it really was about Brooklyn in 2010.
Okay.
And it was very specific for whatever reason. And it was made in 2010. So I just decided to call it Brooklyn 2010.
Okay.
I mean, you can call it Brooklyn 2010, but for some reason I call it Brooklyn 2010.
It's more mysterious to say Brooklyn 2010. It sounds like a little code at the end, but you don't quite know.
Right.
I like that. I love that painting. It's really.
I know. I love that painting too, by the way. When I see it, I'm very attached to that painting.
Yeah.
We have another question about music. What kind of music do you listen to when you paint? What's your favorite type of music to paint to?
Often it's vocal music and it's classical, and it can be Bach. It can be a lot of Bach cantatas. It can be opera, certain parts of an opera. I don't listen to whole operas, but I do have parts of operas. I love Philip Glass, for example. I love Laurie Anderson. Messiaen. I don't know. There's a lot of, there's a contemporary Czech composer whose name I'm forgetting, but whose music I absolutely love. I don't know, it's just I have a pile of CDs and I just go through them and fill the CD player, and then I take out what I don't like. There's a local jazz musician called Warren Bernhardt. I listen to he's an absolutely brilliant musician. I listen to his music. Nina Simone, that kind of thing. Janis Joplin. But mostly it's classical. And it can be Chopin, it can be Mozart. A lot of requiems. I have lots of requiems. Verdi's Requiem. I everybody's Requiem. I'll listen to anybody's.
Wonderful.
Give me a Requiem.
Got it. All right. Any further questions, Donna, for Joan?
I
know we've asked you a million. I know we could keep going all day.
But I don't want to. If I could just ask one last question, Joan, because I was going to ask you, but I didn't want to interrupt you during your slides because you were doing such a terrific job talking about the paintings. But people have always talked about the grid in your work and how you broke the grid and as a sort of feminist gesture. And I still see so much evidence of the grid as an underlying structure in the paintings that you showed us today, for example. And I just wonder, do you still sort of think about that? And has that the way you think about the grid and not really using the grid to break free in a way? Do you think about it the same way that you used to in the 70s?
Well, it's such a, it's a complex question that you're asking. The grid, believe it or not, originally came from the fact that I was working with children in Bed-Stuy, and they were making art on lined paper. And then the other place the grid came from, or lines came from, was in my studio on Mulberry Street, the bottom half of the wall was tongue and groove, and it was white lines. And one day I was painting, and all of a sudden I noticed that there were little delicate drips all over this white tongue and groove. And I looked at those delicate drips on the tongue and groove, and I said, that's what I want my paintings to look like. And that's really the beginning. I would not, I mean, look, people can write whatever they want. I never thought of breaking out of the grid as a feminist gesture. I mean, I would say everything I do is a feminist gesture on, you know, in some ways, but I don't know, the grid just became important to me to make order, you know, and to be able to speak and to be able to make paintings that were like symphonies, because symphonies have different sections and different parts. And you know, I always wanted in one painting to be able to have a beginning, a middle, an end, you know, a resolution, a happy part, a sad part. I was always bored with, for example, color field paintings, because it just didn't have enough for me. I would walk into a museum, look at it, turn around, and that would be it. I wanted a painting that really had many different parts to it, like a symphony does. So I think the grid, you know, served me well. Was I breaking out of the grid? I mean, I know Sean Scully wrote about that in the London the catalog for Blaine Southern, that you know, he's still using the grid, and I was brave enough to break out of it. But I wasn't thinking about it that way, really. But I guess I did do that. Oh, you know, it goes way back to very early paintings in the 60s where for me, a very bold move was, it was a window shape I was always using, and I made a stroke across the window shape, and I was breaking out of the window. And that really was the breakout right there. And now I'm using it again in a certain way. I am, because the right side of all these paintings definitely have, even though I might not be making a grid on them, they have a grid structure. They're like the stroke paintings with grids. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, does that?
No, that's a great answer. That really, that's very interesting. So thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we are just about out of time. So I wanted to say thank you again to Joan. This was a wonderful treat, and we certainly appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and present to us, and also show us your studio, which was such a wonderful glimpse into your process. So yes, thanks. And I'd like to thank Donna too, and Whitney and Carrie and everybody who helped make today possible. Of course, like to thank all of our fabulous members and donors and Joan's friends for being here with us this morning. And I'll have just a save the date for our next members event, which will be the Art of Africa, 4 Decades of Collecting at the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, with their founding curator of that collection and Rutgers alum, Richard B. Woodward. So that will be an exciting members event, and that's April 27th at 6 p.m. So save the date for that. And once again, thank you all so much. And thank you to Joan. We look forward to seeing still in the museum when we reopen, hopefully in the fall.
Yeah,
yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Whitney.
Thanks, Joan.
Thanks, Carrie. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.